In this episode of Inside Rugby, I'm going to give an overview of the Rugby World Cup, what it's all about, where did it come from, and how does it work? Hello and welcome to Mark Philpott Inside Rugby. This is where you get all your rugby news and reviews and previews from around the world. This year I'm covering the Rugby Championship, all the warm-up games to the Rugby World Cup and all of the World Cup as well. So if you're a rugby fan and you want to keep pace with all the rugby news, then make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I thank you very much for that. Look, in this video, I thought it was time to do a Rugby World Cup intro, and it's more or less for people that don't understand too much about the tournament, who may be getting connected to rugby for the first time. There's a lot of new rugby fans around the world, and I want to make sure as we head into this year's amazing World Cup that people understand how the tournament works, what's a little bit of the history of it, and how do we get to the final. So that's what this video is going to be all about. Well, it's a significant year in history when it comes to rugby this year, because 200 years ago, a young man called William Webb Ellis picked up a ball during a football game in England and started running with it. That's a legendary story of how the sport of rugby actually started at rugby school in England in 1823. Since then, the game has grown and evolved over the years, and we find ourselves here in 2023 facing another Rugby World Cup. This year it's going to be held in France, and last time out in 2019 it was held in Japan. The Cup is held every 4 years, and it's competed against by the top rugby nations in the world. Now, if you're a little bit confused how that all works as far as the selection criteria goes, I'm going to explain all that in the video, so stay tuned for that. So the Rugby World Cup started first of all in 1987. It was co-hosted back then in New Zealand and Australia. 1987 was the first time I had an opportunity to go to a Rugby World Cup game in New Zealand, and I went to Athletic Park on a very cold and windy day to watch the All Blacks beat Argentina 46 points to 15. I'll never forget that day, having my first opportunity to watch the World Rugby Cup. It was fantastic, and it lives in my memory forever. Since then, it's been held 9 times. South Africa have won 3, New Zealand have won 3, Australia's won it twice, and England is the only other nation to have won the Rugby World Cup. South Africa won the Rugby World Cup in 2019, beating England in the final, and they go into this year's competitions as the cup holders. So if you're new to the Rugby World Cup, this is how the qualifying process happens. How does the qualification work? First of all, there are 20 teams that go into the Rugby World Cup. 12 of those teams are from the last World Cup, the top 12 teams from the last World Cup, and the 3 top teams in each pool stage of the World Cup are seeded for the next tournament. So if 12 teams go through from the previous World Cup, that means there's 8 spots left in this year's World Cup for teams to fight out against. And what happens is there is a playoff competition that takes place across Europe, the Americas, Oceania, and Asia and Africa, and each of those regions get a selected number of spots that they can play for. And then there's a final intercontinental playoff game that takes place to select the last team that gets in. So that's how the final 8 are put into the 12 from the previous tournament to give us 20 teams in this year's tournament. So this year's tournament starts on September the 8th, and that's when some of the first of pool games will take place, and it goes through until the final on October the 28th. There's 2 stages to the Rugby World Cup. The first stage is called the pool stage, and that's where each team in the pool plays against each other. There's 5 teams in each pool. What happens then is we go into a knockout stage. So the teams are put into each pool based on their world rankings at the time. So the top team will go into Pool A, and then B, C, and D accordingly. Then it flows down from there. So the next ranked teams will go into Pool A, Pool B, Pool C, and Pool D. and so on. So you get a good makeup of the different levels of rugby. The last positions in each pool are made up of those teams that went through the qualifying process. So that's how the pools are determined. Now, there is a bonus system determining the outcome of the pool stage if there are any teams level on points after the pool games. So the bonus point systems works on how many points a team scores within each game. After the pool stages of the tournament, there will be 8 teams that qualify to go through to the knockout stage. And these will be the winners and the runners-up from each of the pools. Then we go into the knockout stage, and the knockout stage consists of quarterfinals, semi-finals and final. And there's also a match for the bronze medal, which is for the 3rd place team. So that's how the tournament actually works. Now let's have a look at the pool groups for this year's tournament in France. And we'll start by taking a look at Pool A. So in Pool A, we've got New Zealand. France, of course, are hosting this year's Rugby World Cup. Italy, Uruguay and Namibia. That's Pool A. Going to Pool B, the reigning World Cup champions, South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Tonga and Romania. In Pool C, we have Wales, Australia, Fiji, Georgia and Portugal. And in Pool D, we have the runners-up from the 2019 Rugby World Cup in England versus the host of last Rugby World Cup, Japan, Argentina, Samoa and Chile. So those are the nations involved in this year's 2023 Rugby World Cup in France. Now I'm going to be doing other videos about each of those pools, what I think is going to happen, the predictions, looking at some of those countries' teams in more details, and also following some of the warm-up games that they're going to be involved in leading up to France 2023. Now, if you're going to be in beautiful France during September and October this year and you want to try and get along to one of the games are going to be played in 9 different locations across France. The different stadiums are in Bordeaux, Lille, Lyon, Marseille, Nantes, Nice, Saint-Denis, Saint-Etienne and in Toulouse. So tickets will be pretty hard to come by, but you might be able to get some to go to some of the pool games. So if you're in any of those beautiful locations throughout France, give it a go and get along to this year's Rugby World Cup. So if this is going to be your first Rugby World Cup and you're going to follow through the tournament, why not hit the subscribe button on my channel and follow all the previews and reviews of the games. But more importantly, I'll be following a lot of the games leading up to the World Cup to give you an insight on how teams are performing, what combinations coaches are using, and we'll be able to see what teams have got momentum going into this year's Rugby World Cup after these warm-up matches take place over the next 50 odd days. So there you go, that's how the Rugby World Cup tournament happens. And now you can follow it through the different stages, the pool stage and the knockout stage, and we'll find out who's going to win the Rugby World Cup this year in 2023. Thanks very much for watching my videos. If you want to continue to watch all the rugby leading up to the Rugby World Cup this year, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification, and you'll be notified every time I drop a video here on Inside Rugby. So until next time, stay well everyone, enjoy your rugby, and I'll be back soon.